Welcome to Global Professionals in Portugal. Today's guest is Carlos Tome of the Carlos Tome Law Firm in Caldas da Rainha, Portugal. He and his team practice a variety of different types of law. And today he's going to help us know which things to stay away from and how to make sure we're staying compliant with Portuguese laws when we are doing business here. Carlos, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, good morning, Cornelia. Thank you for your invitation. And I'm going to explain and doing my best as I can to answer your questions, okay?
Thank you. So first off, can you tell us just a little bit about your firm and how you started it and how long you've been in practice?
I studied law in Coimbra and I finished in 1993, came to Caldas 1995, and I started in a really small room around 20 square meters with one of my colleagues. No one knew me because I grew up in Germany. Then I came to Portugal. I studied law. And no one knew nothing about me. And then we start working. And with time, we settled a partnership, several lawyers. And then in 2003, we purchased then a big office and we started the law firm. Now we are 13 lawyers, and we practice almost all the fields in law, like public law, family law, commercial law, immigration, real estate, everything that has to do with court proceedings. And we are learning every day.
Wonderful. You grew up in Germany. So now I know you personally, obviously you speak English, Portuguese, you speak German. Do you speak any other languages?
No, I only speak English, and my best language besides of Portuguese is of course German. I understand French. In our office, everybody speaks French. I'm the only one that don't speak. It's funny.
And I think you told me everybody in your office speaks English too.
Yes, at the moment in Portugal, as already, especially the young generation, everybody speaks wonderful English. They start in the school and everybody speaks English in the office, yes.
Okay, so today I was hoping you could give us some tips and strategies of when we need to understand if we're breaking the law, when we need to understand when we need to really engage here legally. If you want to start a business in Portugal, do you need a lawyer for that?
As everything in life, you can do many things alone without a lawyer. Imagine when it comes to request a visa to live in our country, especially US clients, the proceeding is straightforward. But sometimes with the lawyer, everything is smoother, so to say. Everything is simpler. But you don't need a lawyer for that. Even to create a business, you can, for instance, we have a mechanisms in our country. It calls empresa na hora, company in 1 hour. And you go to that office, yes, and you go to that office, and technically after 1 hour you have a company. And most of those departments, not in Caldas, unfortunately, but if you go to Leiria, for instance, most of people working there, they speak English, and you can create a company, no problem. But again, maybe if you have an advice, imagine if you go to that department, what kind of rules do you want to create? And is it only a company for you? Do you have a partner? What kind of agreement do you have with the partner? What happens a lot is that you have an idea, you have a partner, you create both the company, and one day if there's a conflict between them, how can you split? How to split? And then you have a huge conflict with your partner. And this kind of rules, who enters with what? Who is the one that gives the financial provisions, or who is working, or the name, or how to share the profits? This kind of aspects are very important. And imagine a name of the company. If you want to choose your own name, then you can be sure you can't get the company in 1 hour, because first of all, you need to get permission for that name, and it's not the easy process. And then after you get the permission of the name, then you can constitute the company. And these aspects are very interesting and important. And in my opinion, you should always have a team, a lawyer and an accountant. This is tremendous important, because the accountant, he looks to the business structure, he looks to all the navigation of the tax issues that are really complex. In our country, it's an obligation for you to have an accountant. And our tax system is really difficult. You have the VAT, you have all the employees, you have the Social Security, you have every month there is something that you need to send to the tax authorities, and therefore the accountant is very important, and the entire legal aspect. And it comes, imagine at the moment, the difference this year is that, of course, an European citizen, he has no problem with the residency. But when it comes someone outside of the Schengen area, like US, South America, or Asia, in the past, he could come with the tourist visa, and then he can start that proceeding. It calls manifestation of interest. That means you have a tax number and you register yourself, or as a self-employed at the tax authorities, or even you start working to someone. And then you registered yourself on that website from now called IMA. It was previously CEF. And what happens that this proceeding was cancelled from our government. It means you cannot use that proceeding anymore. In that case, then you need to enter already with the work visa in our country. And these aspects are, of course, very important. And then entering our country, what is the activity? Do you need a license for that? Or do you need any guarantees? Imagine if you want to create a temporary work company, that means you have only people working for you, and the companies hire workers from your company. In that case, you need a huge guarantee to give to the Social Security. And sometimes you don't know that. And then you start the entire business, you spend time, you spend energy, you spend money, and suddenly it's not possible to do that. An example, we have a company that sells cannabis. The company itself is not difficult to create, but to get the license, it was a fight more than 1 year to get the license. Okay.
Wow.
And these are tremendous aspects where a lawyer can help.
So I want to highlight a couple things that you said because they're really important. One of them is that in Portugal, you must have an accountant.
Yes.
So especially for people coming from the United States, in the US, you can basically just log online and pay $100 and you're a business. But here you actually need to set up a structure. You need to make sure everything's right. And then you need to have an accountant every month. You can't just do your own books.
No, and it would be suicide, so to say, for someone to start a business without an accountant. Of course, imagine that you work to a company and you get paid as a salary every month. This is something different, because then you can submit your IRS declaration at the end of the year. You can do it. I would never do it alone. But okay, but you can do it. But when it comes to a real business, or self-employed, or you start a company, it's an obligation for you to have an accountant, and that will cost you something. If it's a small company, something around 200 or 250 euros a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And this, you can't have a company, for instance, you create the company and you have 15 days to register the company at the tax authorities. And this registration needs to be made already with an accountant. This is a mandatory.
And also, so the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really important is about partnerships, because this is true in the US as well. A lot of people start a business with their friend or somebody who they like, and they don't have a legal partnership agreement, or maybe they use some kind of standard agreement that they found on the internet. And the problem with that is if you have any problems at all in your partnership, you're always falling back on that contract. It's very important to have a partnership agreement. I think that is a really important thing, to have an attorney help you with a partnership agreement in any country.
That's correct, Lynn. And you need to divide friendship and business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when it comes to create, and this is one of the aspects that happens more, that we have more demand from clients. They are coming saying, I'm not satisfied with the way that my partner acts, and I want that to finish that partnership. And we say, okay, is there any agreement to terminate that partnership? Right. They say, no. Okay, then let's look to the rules of the company. And the rules of the company are general rules that says nothing. Imagine the situation. Very simple. That there is a fact. Imagine that a family company. The father wants to create a family company, and he says that if one of my daughters married, I have the right to terminate a partnership in the company. Is that possible? Yes. But then how to calculate the value to pay to this person? This kind of aspects needs to be addressed in an agreement. If you don't have,
and that's actually what we do. This is an overlap. So our company does business valuation, and so we work with partnerships a lot when they're dissolving too, because you're right, whether you're buying somebody out or they just, whatever the reason is, the value needs to be determined independently.
Yes. This is essential, and you need to predict on that agreement what kind of situation the partners have the right to terminate that agreement, and how to fix, to calculate the value that this partner, now that he went out of the company, what rights he has. And the problem is that needs to be agreed before you enter in such a company. Because if you don't have that, as we have two partners, you have 50-50. Okay, if we are talking about, let's say, a bigger company, like a shareholder company, we call it SA. A shareholder company, it's different because you have more partners involved, and sometimes for taking some decision, you need only the majority, 50% plus one.
Right.
It's easier. But when it comes, you have two partners, and each has 50%.
How do you resolve? You have to have terms for how you resolve disputes if you disagree. Absolutely. I think that's so important. And it's really important to have those agreements in place when everybody is still friends.
Correct.
Go through one of my friends, she lost her company because her partner got divorced. They didn't have any terms in their partnership agreement about what to do in the event of divorce of one of the members. And it basically broke their whole company, and they had to go out of business because it was a contentious divorce, and it ruined the company. So thinking about having an attorney help you with those things ahead of time, talk about divorce, death, disability, like if you get sick, or just even non-participation. If you just decide one day, like, hey, I don't want to work anymore, but I'm going to still take half the money.
Yes.
You need to have terms in your contract so that both partners agree on how much work they're going to do. Because if you don't have that in there, then legally they can just stop working and still collect half the money.
Yes. As you mentioned, it's not only a case of a conflict, but situation that happened, a disease, a death, a divorce, and this kind of private situation that are not under the control of the partners, of the members of that company, can destroy completely a company. It's true. And this kind of agreements, again, that's why it's a lawyer important and an accountant in terms of creating a business. Then, of course, the other aspect that is also tremendously important is the activity itself, what kind of field, and if the person stays in the country or not. Because if you don't stay in the country, you need to have a person 100% committed with that business, and you need to trust that person. This is essential. Because from another perspective, Cordelia, you can have the best contracts in the world, the best lawyers in the world, but if you don't trust people and there is no trust, then forget it, okay? But yes, the thing that sometimes I verify is that people are starting businesses and they are not the entire year or in Portugal, and something happens only when they are here in Portugal. That is not possible. That is not possible. They need or to be here 100%, or they need to have a trusted person here in Portugal that they can deal with the business when they are not here. And this is essential.
Now, what a lot of foreigners do is they come here and they have a business that they run from here, but it's a foreign registered entity. So whether it's in another EU country or Ireland or Estonia or America, the business legally resides in another country, but the members, and I know there's some gray area here, and this gets into a lot of accounting gray area that we don't necessarily need to get into in this show, but if you have a foreign owned entity, do you need to talk to a Portuguese attorney in addition to an accountant to make sure that you're in compliance with laws here?
It's essential because that is possible. It's very common when we talk about companies that have the head office in Europe. They normally create so-called childs. They create another company in Portugal, and to cut, so to say, the responsibility from one company to another. And also in terms of taxes, there is a huge advantage because the mother lent money to the Portuguese company. And in terms of taxes, it has a huge advantage, especially if we are working with companies based in Netherlands, Ireland, etc., etc.
Okay.
Saying that it's true that it's more complex because you must handle with tax obligation in both countries. You need to look to the double taxation treaties. You need tax filing is completely different, and it's very common that we have meetings with the lawyer and the accountant together in Portugal and in Belgium, in Netherlands, that we have meeting together and we discuss all those aspects. Yes, it's correct.
Are there types of licensing requirements that you've seen people accidentally violate when they come here? Or
we think in terms of violation, maybe the intellectual property in terms of, I don't know, names, in terms of brands, etc. That happens also. We have a colleague in the office that is specialized on that field, and he has lots of work because it is also very important to protect this kind of rights. The logo, the name, everything, it's really important. And the reason is, technically we are living in Portugal, but we are living in a huge market. And we need to protect ourselves because we don't know if suddenly there's a French company saying, hey, you are using my name or you are using my patent, and you don't want it. You don't want that kind of conflict. And yes, there are many industry regulations, like imagine in the field of construction, you need the so-called alvara, or you need some specific certificates like to work as an electrician, to work as a plumber. They give you then that kind of documentation for you to work. Or let me see other things.
The other thing is that if you want to start working with Portuguese, either contractors or employees, do you help companies with that as well?
Yes, this is a very tricky situation. Everything that has to do with the labor law, it's really difficult, even for the Portuguese companies. Why? Because our labor law, it protects a lot the employees. And if you want to create contract, imagine it's not easy to understand for a foreigner that you can hire someone and after 3 months you don't like him, or you don't, for some reason the business is not growing and you want to finish the contract, terminate the contract, and you say tomorrow you don't come, I don't want to work anymore. And that is not possible, or it's only possible in really specific cases, and it's very complex. And there are some mistakes. Some accountants, they are creating the contracts. People are looking to ChatGPT to creating the contracts. People are looking to websites and they create the contracts, and then they have a huge problem because our labor law, it's really important.
Labor law here is complicated, and I've talked to several Portuguese business owners as well who say that you have to be really careful because it's hard to fire people here, even if they don't do any work at all. I've heard that it's very difficult to fire people.
Yes, and imagine you start the business in our country, you believe that it will be something with success, and you need 4 or 5 people to start.
Right.
Okay, you say, no problem. You found already the right person. And well, one thing that I also only not to forget, there are many subsidies and support from the government for you to hire people. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in terms of Social Security, you have exemption of Social Security, or even have a subsidy that can go until 6, 7, 8, or 9,000 euros for each person. Imagine someone that has a degree less than 30 years, someone that is a single mother or single father, or has a certain age. You get many support from the government to create those kind of jobs. Okay, this is very interesting. But then come back to that example. There is a person who wants to start a business and needs to hire 5 people. And he tells me, okay, Carlos, but I don't know, what can I do? I want to have the right that after 1 year, I can fire that. In that case, we need a specific contract for that situation. And we need to prove that it has to do with an initial activity, and only then we can create this special contract. Because if those rules are not fulfilled, then the contract is valid, but the worker can say, yes, but this contract is a contract without any deadline, and therefore, if you want to fire me, then or you need to reach an agreement with me, or you need to file for some special proceedings in order to fire me. And again, that costs money, time, and you need to avoid that. And for that, you need to have the right person to help you at the start, not at the end, at the start.
Okay. So in addition to hiring and working with people, are there any other legal pitfalls or legal mistakes that you can maybe help us to avoid as business people here?
If you have a good idea, if you want to invest, if you have money, everything is a heaven. But suddenly you are facing obstacles. Main rule, due diligence.
Yeah.
Second, never sign documents, legal documents that are not translated carefully to your language. Sometimes it's like when you are on holidays. You go to another country, you want to invest, you like the country, you like the people, you have the money, and then when you come to sign legal documents, you relax. And that you need to avoid. Again, read the contracts, never sign a contract that is not translated because something sometimes is different. Due diligence, it's tremendously important. Second, what are the impacts of the bureaucracy in our country? Again, a company that wants to someone that wants to create a company, buys the land, buys the office, or rent the office, this is easy. But when it comes to get the license to start selling cannabis, and it takes almost 2 years to get that license, can ruin completely your business plan. And the bureaucracy in our country is tremendous. Imagine this situation. That happens now a lot. You believe, if I buy that land, if I divide that land in several plots, find a builder and start building houses, and I can sell them in my country, in the US, in Netherlands, in Germany, I win money. Great. But then you start counting how long it takes for you to get the approval from the council for dividing the land. Then you start counting how long it takes for you to get the license to start the construction. And then how long it takes for the construction, how long it takes for the habitation license for those houses. And suddenly you thought 2 years, everything will be finished. And after 5 years, you are still struggling to get the right papers. Okay.
Yeah.
That said, you must be realistic. You need to look to other projects, similar projects. You need to look and, okay, what happened? How long it takes? What was the costs?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's also important to have local people to help you. Why?
Right.
When you go to the tax office in Caldas, when you go to the Social Security office in Caldas, when you go to the council in Caldas, they are saying completely different things than in Cubasa, than in Lisbon. Let me give you an example. For instance, you want to build a house, you need to hire an architect. You like that architect. The way it is designed, great. But in that case, you need to have two things. You need that architect for the design, but then it's important to have a local architect for the papers, because this local architect goes to the council. Imagine an architect from Lisbon. They don't know what kind of papers the council from Caldas will ask for that. But the local architect, he knows. And then, it's a team. But of course, for everything, instead of having one architect, you need two, it will cost you more money. But at the end, if you can advance your project in 1 year, it saves you money. Okay.
Yeah, and my experience so far of Portugal is it's a very relationship-oriented economy. So I think that in general, the more people that you can have good relationships here with, that it helps. It's good in life, but it's also good in business to help you know how to handle things.
Yes. Let me give you an example. If we have a case and we need to do a certain thing in that proceeding, we say, we know, don't go to that department because they have a completely different interpretation. Use that department. Let me give you an example from this morning. We have clients, they want to marry it. And we know that let's go to that particular civil registration department because we know that they accept some documents. Right. Other departments in other areas, they will say, no, we don't accept that documents because these documents need to be apostilled with, it must have the apostille or something like that. This is very important to have this knowledge. Okay? Yeah. And this, of course, can only come with time and with experience. Let me tell you one thing. I'm joking always with this, and I'm saying that in Portugal, to get electricity and sometimes water, you need a PhD for that. Yeah, because it's really. Yeah. And one thing that is tremendously important is if you are not buying a new house, because if it's a new house, they finished building 1 month ago or something like that, no problem. But if you don't buy a new house, never sign the purchase deed without electricity inside the house connected.
Now, does this type of thing also apply if you're renting office space?
No, this is different because the office space, normally it's integrated in the condominium, and there the rules are completely different because normally the condominium, there is the main meter already, everything is installed. We have other units already sold and rented out, etc. If you are buying a commercial assets, an office separated from the building, it's a big office, then you need to be careful. Or you buy something that then you transform in an office. Imagine it's a warehouse. It's a warehouse, but if you put there a desk, then suddenly it's your office. Then you need to be careful. If you are talking about a unit that is already in a condominium, in a huge building that is running, the risk is less.
Okay, so that's really good to know for people. If you're renting or buying an office inside of, say, an office building, it's much easier than if you take a warehouse or some other structure and convert it into an office. Can you tell me, what does And forgive my Portuguese here. What is una pessoal LDA? Is that right?
Yeah.
What is
That is
that?
correct. That is correct. It's unipessoal. Unipessoal means that it's a company with only one quota. That means one shareholder, so to say. In Portugal, you can. This is a way for you, not only for tax reasons, but especially in some activities, to protect from any liability. Imagine that you are in the field of the constructions. Again, construction, unfortunately, there are many accidents. And
Right.
if something happened, you have that legal entity, you are liable, even if you have an insurance. And now I forgot to mention one thing for everybody that wants to start businesses. Insurance are tremendously important. And please be aware that now everybody's selling insurances, even banks are selling insurances, but you need to have someone that understands your needs, understands the right insurance, because then you have insurance, you think you are protected, and suddenly they say, no, I'm sorry, it's not covered by this insurance. Yes, but someone told me it's covered. No, it's not covered.
Right.
Insurances are tremendously important in any business. It's true that it's a way not only for taxes, but especially to protect any liability if you are responsible for anything. Imagine there's an accident and the company is liable. Only the assets from the company itself are liable, and your personal assets, your money, your car, your houses, everything that belongs to you in your private name is protected. In our country, each person can only have one unipessoal. You can't have two unipessoals to avoid frauds, of course. And it's a way that instead of working as entrepreneur, and in this case, you are taxed in a progressive tax that can go up until 48%. You are taxed as a company, and in this case, you are taxed 50,000 euros, 17%, and more than 50,000 euros, we are talking always of profit, 21%. Okay, that is a way for you to also to save some taxes.
Okay.
That's why it calls unipessoal, because it's only one person, one shareholder.
Okay. And then what is an SA business?
SA business is a shareholder company.
Oh,
It's a bigger structure, and you use that normally for more relevant investments, or because you want to get some financial support in terms of, okay, now you have a company with 50,000 euros shares and you want to give some shares to someone else and he invests in your company. Our structures more complex and for more, let's say, more higher investments.
Okay. So it sounds, in addition to having an accountant, it's really important as a business owner or even as a shareholder or something here, you should have an attorney also, because there's so many complexities that you just don't even know that you would need to look out for.
At the beginning, it's tremendously important at the beginning, because to protect you, it's like this. We have a problem in our country. And the problem in our country is that our courts are really slow. And therefore, you need the lawyer to avoid problems.
Right.
And not to solve problems.
Right.
Because solving problems, or you reach an agreement with your opponent, or you go to court and it can take 2-3 years to get a court decision. And this is also really difficult. If you have previously everything settled, or the main aspect settled and agreed and etc., then it's more easier for you to avoid problems, okay? Because you are protected. And sometimes if you have an agreement, a strong agreement, before the conflict goes to court, you have, of course, your lawyer, you contact your lawyer, the opponent contact his lawyer, and then we have a meeting and we look to the contract and say, come on, what should we discuss? It's clear. The contract is this, and you violate the contract. I don't know, do you want to get that penalty that is under this contract? You want to pay this fine? And normally you reach an agreement because no one wants to go to court. Without that previous work, without that protection, it's like you are working without any net under you, and you can fall and there is no protection at all.
So I will say that it's much more affordable to have an attorney on your team, to have an accountant on your team than it is in some other countries.
It's true. We have clients that are really surprised with the way that we and when I say we and other offices in the country,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, especially US clients, when they come and we tell them our fees and they say, okay, give me your bank account because I want to transfer the money. I say, no, you pay only 50% after this or 50% at the end. And they say, Carlos, that never happens in the US because you pay immediately up front. I say, no. That is not the way we work. And of course, the fees structure is completely different.
Can you make some suggestions about how somebody can identify a good attorney to help them with their business? What would be some things that they might want to look out for?
I think that the foreigners have luck because many lawyers, they speak English. The staff speak English, they speak English and more than one language also. There are many solutions. It's important.
All right, well, thank you so much for being our guest today. All of Carlos's contact information is going to be below in the description for the show. Thank you, Carlos, so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I think you make a wonderful job. And this is really important what you are doing, helping other people. And again, share knowledge. If any of your members of the audience, they want any more specific question that I can help, I'm happy to help if necessary, okay? And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much.